Welcome back to Momentous Struggle, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast. On this week's episode, Aubrey and I are going to talk about the local GT that we had, talk a little bit about that, and a really interesting topic came up basically throughout the GT that I think we wanted to just have a more in-depth conversation after the event. So we're going to talk about that as well, but the focus I think is going to be on the first part of it, at least to talk about the local GT we had, because it was a really fun event I was happy to have so many people come out and play at. So, but as always, not as always. Sometimes sometimes I give you a vacation, but yeah, for the
As
for
almost
as
always.
almost always, I'm joined by Aubrey. Aubrey, how we doing today?
Hey, you know what? I had a good time. It was a good weekend. The event was at a new location that Gamers Guild, one of the LGSs in the area. They've opened up one in one of their stores in North Phoenix, and it's dangerous, Todd, because it's attached to a restaurant and a full bar.
Right.
And that is a dangerous combination. I'm gonna
And
have
the
to like,
food's good. It's not just
yeah.
bar food. It's like good food.
Oh
So
yeah,
like
no,
I
it's a
know,
real restaurant.
yeah, it's like good food. So that was, I mean, and it's, I mean, talking with some of the other people, like they that were there, they're like, because they Gamers Guild like reached out to Atomic Mass Games and asked if they could have somebody come out, and they had their marketing director actually came out, and actually spent the day out
Mhm.
there, as well as and other executives too. So they had multiple like executives come out and actually spend some time and
Yeah.
talking with them. They're like, this is probably one of the largest stores we've seen in the country. I mean, it's coming from people that go around the United States, or around the world for that matter. To different events, that really says something. I mean, it was a gigantic space. It is impressive. So to give you an idea, that space before they built it there was a gym. There was like where a gym that you work out at, and it was a large gym. So it was impressive. I can't
Yeah.
say that enough.
Oh yeah. No, I wasn't sure what to expect. Wasn't, we're on the west side, so we don't go to Gamers Guild all the time because they're out in Tempe, and I wasn't sure what to expect. And then I walked in, I'm like, oh, this is big. And again, I've not that I've been on a lot of places on the East Coast, but the only place I can think of is like there's some places up in the Pacific Northwest that are
Mox,
pretty big, but
I think would be, yeah,
that's it.
right,
That's the only thing I can think of is up there where
right.
there's like a gaming shop like every time you turn around.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, I very much would say that it's very similar to, like, on the scale of impressiveness as Mock Sporting House. Like that's like where I would say that. But it's wild. I mean, like compared to their Tempe store, I think it's like three to four times the size of their Tempe store.
It's
From
gotta
what I
be.
remember, and that store was impressive. And so it's just like this thing was unbelievably bonkers. I think they had like, I want to say they have like 72 tables for like tabletop game wargaming, and those are 4 by 6 foot tables. So it's like that, just to kind of give an idea of like that's a third of the gaming area is just those tables.
Right, because there's an equally large area for card games,
Yep.
and I mean, I didn't even count those. I have no idea about those tables, but the roughly the same amount of space full of tables for card games.
Yeah, I would say that they probably could easily fit like 256 players in there for a TCG event. Like I would say that because I know that they're running a Star Wars Unlimited planetary qualifier, and that's capped at 128 players. And I'm sure that they would be saving space to at least have another event in there at the same time. So just ridiculous, absolutely
I,
ridiculous.
I mean, the space is large enough that you could almost run like a con level event in there,
Yeah. Oh, very easily.
like that. You could have a whole con in that store, and
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
No, not that I can
Cool.
recall. It was big. It was big. It was, and it was nice. I mean, it was a great place for a GT. I mean, we had a lot of space to ourselves. It was a grand opening, so they like, I mean, it was really cool. So like, it was $40 to get into the GT, but that came with a $10 credit to the restaurant too. So like, you got $10 off at
Right.
the like for lunch, and that was about what a burger and fries there was costing anyway, and it was a good burger. So I mean, it was an impressive event. I was very excited for that. And like I said, I think I know a lot of people have already kind of like pinged me in other discords, and Kenny in this in his Slack is like pinged me about like getting the individual that won on so, and I've been talking with him. He's Jake. He's definitely game to come on and talk about his list, because I know a lot of people were excited to see, like, spoiler alert, that the winning list was an all Republic list, and taking down Dooku Grievous
Mm.
in the finals. So yeah, it was wild. So it'll be interesting to get him on and talk, because I mean, one of the other things that kind of jumped out was I don't think he ran ARFs at all. I'd have to go back and look at his list, but he didn't run ARFs with Obi, with his Obi and Hunter list did not have the ARFs in it. So like, a lot of people were like, really, I thought saw a little bit of confusion on that one in the discords, and the slacks, is like, far as like why he didn't run that. Well, you know what, I have it right up in front of me. Let me take a seat, let me take a look at his list.
Yeah, like I don't want to talk about it too much because we're gonna have him on, and like again, I was one of the people that lost to him,
Hmm.
and I just realized I didn't even think
Yeah,
about
he
that.
has the 212th, the Clone Commandos, Techo, and Wolfpack. No ARFs showing up in his list. Running a Republic list with no ARFs. So yeah, it'll be
And one a GT. Hey,
and one a
all
GT.
right.
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk to him about it, and we'll have a conversation with him and see where his thought process was, because I think a lot of people are interested to hear how he came to this list, how he thought of this list. So we'll definitely be having that conversation. But really, we should be talking about Aubrey, who snuck his way into the top 8 this weekend.
I just bribed a couple of people to not come back. That's
Right,
all.
right,
It's all
right.
right. It's how it is. No,
So
no, I did make top 8, but I squeaked in, Todd. That was like they left the
yeah,
door open and I wandered in to the top
yeah.
8.
So basically, what it was we had two guys that came up from Tucson. One of them made the top 8. The other one did not. So the one who didn't was like, I'm not going to make my friend stay up here, and he decided to drop out of the top 8. And then that put Z, one of our locals, he in there, but he was not. He's like, no, he wanted to come play in the Swiss and then spend the next day with his family. So basically, by default, like, you went from 10th to the top 8, which is like you were the highest ranking 2-2 player and ended up getting into the Swiss there, or into the top 8.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I was really surprised. I had an entirely different plan for Sunday because I was expecting to do about 2-2, and I went about 2-2, and
Yep.
then we're standing around figuring out top 8, and I'm like, wait, what? What? You're dropping? I'm like, oh, okay, that's sad. Then the next guy's like, oh, nope, I'm not doing it either. I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
and
It was wild, because
uh,
yeah, so basically it was like the way that we had it set up, like one of the three ones was not going to be getting in, if like within the top to make the top 8. And we, like, I was talking with Z beforehand, and he's like, yeah, my strength of schedule is pretty bad, because and he also had an 0-2 loss, but we had one, two, three, there was 4 people that had an 0-2 loss, at least somewhere in there, that were 3-1. So that wasn't necessarily it, but his strength of schedule was the lowest. So
yeah.
because of that, he ended up getting out. But like you said, he wasn't planning on playing, so it worked out well for you. It worked out well.
Hey, I had a good time. I mean, I will say, so Sarah Cruel finally got to meet you in person. Super fun. Yeah, he gave me a good lesson in why Thrawn and Moff Gideon are so terrifying. It was a situation where we both didn't blink with our list chicken, but I
Mhm.
almost wish I had tried to do the double fake because I played Kanan and Charming Leia into that. But his other list, of course, was Iden and was it Vader 1 or Vader 2? Probably Vader 2.
It's Vader too. Yeah, Emperor's
Yeah,
Servant.
and so I was like, if I pick my displacement Mando Maul list and he picks Iden, he's gonna shoot me off the table. But I don't think
Mm,
he's gonna pick Iden, because if he picks Iden and I pick Rebels, then he's not gonna shoot me off the table. I was like, but if he picks Thrawn and Moff Gideon, the Rebels are gonna have a hard time. But I really don't want to get just shot off the table.
right.
So I went with Rebels, and he did what he did, and no, it was a lot of fun. We had a good game, but there was just a couple of moments where I like the biggest thing that I had, because like there was some stuff where like I'm still getting used to Leia, and so like I did like a dash. I like paid for a dash and then focused and shot, and it was like, well, why didn't I just focus and get a free dash? Little stuff like that. But
Hmm.
the one key moment is at the end of struggle 1. I had to attack with Sabine into Thrawn, and I just needed one shove. Just needed one shove, 2 successes. And I didn't the fatal flaw I made is I didn't realize that if I didn't get that I was just going to lose the struggle on the spot,
Hmm.
and I didn't get it. But here's the thing, I had 3 force still. I still had Kanan, and I knew I was going to have to force push with Kanan, right? I needed the 2 force for something.
Hmm.
Probably a force push from Kanan, I would assume. Like I was setting up that turn, and I was like, and I still had like 2 or 3 activations, and I'm like, well, I know I need to get thrown off this point, but I don't want to do like you only get 2 rerolls, right? Rebel, and Spectre on Sabine.
Hmm.
So I didn't use my 3rd force on Sabine, which was a
Hmm.
mistake. I lost the struggle the next turn because I didn't push Thrawn. And I mean, it's dice. Like I might not have gotten it anyway, but do you want to know the worst part is when I finally got to Kanan, who ended up being my last activation, and even though I mean, and now we're in struggle 2, like the whole landscape had changed at that point. But you want to
Right.
know what I had on that turn? I had 1 extra force still.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean I could use it on like a Kanan attack, okay, yay, but that didn't matter. I had the 1 force because everything that changed, like I just ended up not needing it for any of my other activations because of how the flop went. And so like losing, and we're on shifting priorities. So I lost struggle 1. So like I mean struggle 3 was also a a bit tough for me because it went, all right, here's the flop. Of course, Sarah Cruel is choosing. Um and so either one, he was gonna have 2 of the 3 objectives, but then he had Fifth Brother uh in reserve, and he was able to take the one of whichever one he chose, he was able to take that. So he started struggle 3 controlling all 4 objectives.
Oh, having all 4 points. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's rough.
and I mean not all 4 objectives. Yeah, having all 4
Yeah,
points, all
all
3
4 points.
objectives. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna try and fight back. Like, I don't think this is gonna go well because it was also like a very commanding, like every objective except for maybe the Fifth Brother one had multiple unit or characters on it. Like it was also gonna be uphill all the way. But I was like, well, I ripped Leia. I'm like, well, Leia is right next to that point where the Fifth Brother just took. I can get up there. I can shoot him off, shove him off. Great, I do that. You want to notice? And now I'm pretty sure this was his second activation, like because he had Fifth Brother. He had Fifth Brother. Oh, there must have been like a turn in between because like at some point he shuffles. It's his second card in the new shuffle, and I had just shot Fifth Brother off that point with Leia. Who comes back on? Fifth
Fifth
Brother.
brother. Yeah.
Fifth Brother. And like at that point I'm just like like yeah, like nah, like it's just over, we're done, like it's fine, like it was a good game. I
Yeah.
had fun.
And Sercruel had an amazing run. He was one of the 2 4-0s in the Swiss. You know,
Yeah.
him and one of our locals, Liam, were both the 2 4-0s. The 2 guys that basically ended up beating in the finals, they were both finished the Swiss 3-1. But I mean, it was amazing, and I was pretty happy. Like from the top 8, like you technically got in. You weren't really top 8, but we're gonna give it to you anyway. But no, but
Hey,
three
I played one game. I played one.
right. But 3 of the top 8 were basically Momentous Struggle community members, which was really cool to see that. And like and it was nice that there was a good mix. Like Jake, I believe, is from Missouri, if I'm not
I-
mistaken.
Or
He's
right, or
either California,
Minnesota,
Missouri.
Missouri. It's got to be somewhere over there.
It's one of those Midwest states. I
Yeah,
know that. And then Sarah
he
Cruel
can
came
tell
down
us.
from, yeah, he will, yeah, for sure. But Sarah Cruel came down from Vegas. So, I mean, we had two, like top 8 had 2 people from out of state, which was really awesome. Oh wait, looking at Longshanks, he is from Minnesota. Yeah, that's what it says.
Hey,
So
there you
Jake's
go.
just from Minnesota. So yeah, I mean, it was really cool that we had people from a different states. It wasn't just Arizona. We did have somebody that came over from California. So I mean, it wasn't just Arizona. We had like 3 different people from or 3 different people from 3 different states that actually came and made it a Southwest kind of an event, which was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was a blast. Like it was a good experience. I mean, Matt and his assistant judge ran a pretty good event, I suppose. I suppose.
I mean, it was mostly all Matt. I mean, the assistant was just there to like hang out, whatever, and drink beer. That guy wasn't that great, but no, I mean, it was like I said, it was great. I mean,
It was Todd, dear listeners. It was Todd. He was the assistant judge.
yeah, but no, I think it went well. And we when Alan came in, one of our other locals, Alan came in and helped us out as well. Like he's another local that came to help. I think he's going to be coming up to Vegas and helping us TO up there for that event as well, which will be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I mean, we had a good spread of people, and I mean, but overall, like the Swiss, I mean, you talked a little bit about the your finals match when you were in the top 8. How was the Swiss? How did that feel for you?
So almost all of my games are very close. So like the
Hmm.
one I remember the one with Jake. Like I actually thought I had buttoned that one up pretty tightly, and he just kept clawing back, and eventually ended up winning. And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, yeah." And I'm sorry because I wasn't expecting to come back for top 8, and I've slept since then. I don't remember all of I don't remember as many of the details because I was like, I'm just gonna have fun. I'm gonna go 2-2, go home, have fun, and then I'm like, oh no, I should have paid more attention. I mean, I will say, Republic felt very strong. I ran against his All Republic list. I'm pretty sure that was when I did Mando Mall because I wasn't expecting his list to be very killy.
Hmm.
And I mean, even though it was Hunter Obi-Wan, like I know it can do shenanigans, but like it was just really close games. Like that one was fun. Let's see, my first round was against see
Looks like you played
now you're
Spectres. You played against
so
It was
yeah,
Jacob. You
so
played
oh
against.
that's right. So I did not want to mirror match round 1 of the tournament, so that I
Mhm.
played and also I don't know how well specters really play against other specters because neither of you is super killy. Like
Mhm.
so I didn't like that. So yeah, I played Mando Mall first and second round. Felt really good. I mean, I was doing a little bit of spice with Ezra and Bounty Hunters because I don't own the like I know everybody's playing Death Trooper Escort and Dark Troopers with Mando right now because that's
Mhm.
the secret sauce. But I decided I wanted 2 tie breaking units, Fifth
Mhm.
Brother and Ezra on the same team, and it also gave me an option if for some reason I thought that like Kanan and Mando might be a good pairing for a particular group. I had the option of having my extra Spectre floating around in that list, although I ultimately didn't do that because in the next 2 rounds, I mean, well, round 3, I'm like, all right, I got to play Spectres because I'm not gonna get stuck. Uh,
Right.
you know,
You didn't
and
want to get list locked going into round 4 because yeah, you definitely played Mando Mall on the first 2 rounds, and then yeah. So I mean, I can see that. I mean, and you let's see, your second round you played into Vader Inquisitor, but you did 2-0 that one. So with Kanan and Leia.
yeah, yeah. So I mean that like so the that Inquisitor list was really cool. Like it was fun to play against, but I mean it's very he's very killy. I mean, it's
Hmm.
Vader. It's Vader Grand Inquisitor. Like you're trying to, and to clarify, Vader one, the Inquisitor Vader, right?
Yeah.
So it was extra killy. So was that was kind of like I kind of felt a little bad because I was like, well, I really need to run Spectres, and also I'm pretty sure you're gonna run this, and yeah, I mean, Kanan and Leia did their things. Like that
Hmm.
was kind of a textbook. Anytime something died, I was bebopping around the board, and even and what I was surprised is so my Rebel Commandos went down pretty early, and I was worried that that was going to put me on the back foot because my rebel, I believe that's the round where my rebel commandos almost left the table. But either way, it's just revenge into aggro. Like I did the
Hmm.
thing. Like there's not really anything spectacular to talk about there. I got
Well,
I got to do the thing.
yeah. I mean, I remember like round 4. That was a very impactful one because that's where you had some issues with deployment, if I recall correctly. On round 4, I know you're blaming somebody for talking to you about it, but you were deploying. What happened there?
So someone came up to me while I was deploying and was talking to me about, I don't know, what was he talking to me about, Todd? Was it irrelevant
I,
to anything I was doing?
this was round 4. I'm sure I'd been drinking quite a bit by that point in time, so I was just babbling away. So I have no. I mean, it wasn't important in any way, shape, or form. So you shouldn't have even been listening to him in the first place. Just saying.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. So anyway, what happened was, dear listeners, is I deployed my rebel commandos at range 1 instead of range 3 because it's the 4th round. I'm tired and somebody's talking to me. So I'm like, da di da di da 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 da. Then we go to like the first turn, and it wasn't, didn't Matt walk over and go,
Yeah.
why are your why are your rebel commandos where they are, Aubrey? Like he's like, what? And it ended up being super important because what
You lost that one on tiebreakers, 1-1 too. So
That's
I'm sure that.
right. Yes, that's right. And because it was such a close game, and there was one point where I needed to like keep them in the back, but like I needed to shoot something off. Like basically there was a moment where the fact that I did not deploy them further ahead like is probably why that game went the way it did. And that's on me. Like hey, that is entirely on me. But also,
I mean,
Todd, why are you talking to me? The ADHD
again,
baby can't handle it.
I mean, like at that point in time, it was probably like a good 8 hours into the day. I know I had quite a few IPAs because they have Lagunitas on tap, um, and
Oh yeah,
and most of
yeah,
the people in the local community know this judge is not going to turn down a beer at any point in time. So I had a couple of frosty ones. I will say that. But it was, yeah, and it
hey,
was a, you know.
all I have to say is that was a great event and this is a great venue, but I'm gonna have to like make sure that I have like bring a reminder token or something for those drinks because they come really quick when all you have to do is scan a
Yeah,
QR code, you order a drink, you keep playing your game, and suddenly a drink appears, and you're like,
yeah,
"Yay, this is
yeah.
fun!" But
They bring the drinks right to your table. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, no, it's
yeah,
pretty good. But yeah, and one of the really cool things, and I didn't mention this, I did say there was two executives that came from the
yeah.
from AMG. One of them was the marketing director Ross. The other one was Michael Plummer, the lead dev for Shatterpoint. And he was gracious enough that he sat down, and we had 29 players, so we were going to have a buy. He played 4 rounds of Shatterpoint, and he was the buy round opponent for each person that played. So big shout out to AMG for sending
Yeah.
Mr. Plummer out. Um, and big shout out to Michael to for being such a good sport and actually playing all of those rounds with all of the opponents, because I know for the community, the fact that they got to sit there and play a game with the person who was like the lead developer for the game that they love so much, was such an honor for so many people. There was like so many people like, I don't mind losing and getting the bye just because I know that's I'm going to get to play against him. So that was a really cool moment, I think, for like the guys that got to play against Plummer. That was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was super awesome. And I mean, again, everybody was having a good time. I mean, that round 4 was again I mean, I know a lot of people were locals because we just talked about how only a couple people came from out of town, but it's
Hmm.
also nice like got to play uh against Sheev and like it was just fun. Like
Hmm.
the whole time it was fun, and then like also it was fun to talk with Mr. Plummer there just about like hobby stuff. Like we were talking about
Right.
painting and we are talking about like his first minis and like what he did as a kid because I'm relatively new and he's like, "Oh yeah, I couldn't bring unpainted models, so I just slapped these together real quick." And I'm looking at him going, yeah, slap together real quick. I can spend like a week on a model and it will look like I was finger painting. But all right, yeah, they're really bad looking. Sure.
Yeah, no, his paint jobs on his models were fantastic. I mean, but when you work with Dallas Kemp, I think you kind of like have that, you kind of have somebody there like give you maybe a little pointer here and there to sit there and bring up those. And he's worked in the industry for so long that I think
Oh
he's
yeah.
he's gonna have that hobbies. But yeah, so I mean that kind of brings us. I mean that was the recap of that. But like I said, when at the start of the podcast here, we had a really interesting conversation that kind of popped up, um, because there was quite a few games that went to time and went to the tiebreakers. And I remember even at Adepticon, people were like getting a little upset about the tiebreakers and everything along those lines. And I'm like, so the question popped up is like, do we need to change the tiebreakers, and the way that they're done from being the first thing that you look at is the number of struggles controlled, because a lot of people were like, well, whoever goes last wins, which is to an extent can be true. And then it was the question was asked, well, if you don't go by the points controlled, which is the main purpose of the game, what do you go to next? And the next logical answer would be to go to wounds. And then and that's I'm like, at at first glance or at the knee jerk reaction, it's like, yeah, wounds is probably the best way to go because you want to go kill stuff. But when we go back and we look at like when this game first came out and you had that Vader summer basically, or the Vader winter, where Vader was just everywhere killing everything, everybody was so miserable. It's like, well, if you go to just wounds as the tiebreakers, then that's going to encourage like lists like Vader and those super aggro lists. And so it was an interesting conversation of like, what is the right answer? I don't know. What do you think, Aubrey?
Well, and so again, we're talking about end of match, time. I honestly, just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'm gonna read it, everybody. So the game timer runs out. The players finish the current turn. After the struggle token has been moved at the end of the turn, if no player has won the struggle, the player who controls the most objectives wins the struggle. The player with the most claimed struggle cards wins the game. If there is a tie, the player who inflicted the most wounds wins the game. If there is still a tie, the game is a draw. And so I so my thing is before we had this conversation, and this was just something that would kind of come up, right? Because
Mhm.
didn't this happen to Sheev twice in the tournament?
Yeah, he had two draws in the tournament, and I think
Yeah.
your game went to a draw, I think too, but
Yeah,
he
because
won
ours
on a
went to a
draw. So I'm almost positive he had three because yours won
yeah.
on a draw because it was 1-1,
Yeah. So there's
or one on tiebreakers, I should say.
yeah. So I mean, some of it is also, well, yeah, there you can make the argument that we need to, finish our games quicker, sure. But but you have to have tiebreak like you have to have a tiebreaker. Like this game
Hmm.
is long. Like even with Mission Critical, sometimes Struggle 1 especially can just 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. Okay, when is somebody gonna break parity? Like at this point, I don't even care if it's you, opponent. I just want somebody to break parity so we could go to the next struggle.
Yeah.
That stuff happens, especially in a
We had
tournament setting over 4 rounds. Like,
right. We had a couple games that went to mission critical right when they finished struggle one.
yeah,
It was
yeah. And I mean, some of that is struggle one does seem to be longer than either struggle two or three. Like sometimes
Mhm.
you can finish struggle two and three in less time than you spent on struggle one. So fine, we could have that conversation. But before, because we talked about this a couple of times over the weekend, and before we had that conversation where it was like, well, this is an objective based game, not a killing based game. And if you switch it around to make wounds more prominent, well, now attrition is suddenly becomes bigger and
And is
better,
that what
and
the
it's
game
a
designers want? Like that's not
yeah,
how this game was created. It wasn't created to be a a killing type of a game. It's like it wasn't it was created to be, like you were saying, an objective controlled game. So it was an interesting thought process of like which like how the tiebreakers dictate how we're going to play the game on the front end.
yeah. And so what we, because we kept talking, and and not just us, there were other people. Like these are not just Todd's and my ideas, we're synthesizing it for you, dear listeners. um the thing is that maybe it really is just we need to change our mindset about the final struggle and mission critical and what that means. And
Hmm.
the reason why I say that is because we are at the point now where if you go to time and it's not your turn, the odds of you winning have dropped dramatically, because all you have to do at that point is make sure you control more objectives, which you should already be trying to do. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean that's where you're at. So then it becomes you need to think about that, the fact that the game is going to end at a certain point, and you maybe need we tend to get in this mindset of, well, the priority objective is the most important one because you're scoring more points. I'm going to go over there, I'm going to go over there, I'm going to go over there. But then you get those times where it's the same objective over and over and over, and everybody's models start piling up on that one objective, right?
Right.
And so maybe we don't do that, because
Mhm.
if you leave all the other objectives undefended, then all of a sudden time gets called. Well, all they got to do is run over to one of the other ones and
Right.
just take that one. So,
So yeah, so like it opened up this train of thought of like, okay, once you get to mission critical, are you looking at trying to sit there and get the priority objective, or do you need to change your mindset to, instead of like, you still need to be concerned about that priority objective, but like how do you fortify those objectives? And this is where tie breaking units really comes into play a little bit more, where like how do you utilize those guys to where, okay, now I'm fortifying these objectives with, like, let's say tiebreaker units, and now I control two objectives, and whether they're not priority or not, but I'm going to just control these two objectives for the last third of the game, that last quarter of the game, where your last 30 minutes, where, and that's, I think, like, maybe we just need to, as players, like, change that mindset of like how we interact with the last 30 minutes of the game.
right. And some of this is hard. I mean, I'm the one who brought this up. I was like, look, these games are long. ADHD baby bouncing around in my head. These two to focus for 2 hours on a game with complex rules and keep it all together and now you're in mission critical, you're in the last 30 minutes, you're now having to track yet another thing because hey, that mission critical has snuck up on me a couple of times where I'm like, oh, I've got one more. Oh, no, I don't have one more turn because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, let me rethink this. So I get that we get deep in the tank, especially on these pivotal turns and these moments, and you start to forget it. And yeah, there's an opposite argument that, well, if I don't take the priority objective, I'm not going to score two, and I could fall behind and just lose anyway. So there's got to be a balance. I'm not saying there isn't a balance, but I think we need to try and like this just has to be part of the game. Like in Magic the Gathering, you got 5 extra turns.
Hmm.
So, I mean, maybe there's something to be said where like each player gets a chance to take objectives, but I don't know how even that is either.
And that could add another 30 minutes to the game. I mean, especially, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, and do we really want to make this now a 2.5 hour game? So I think,
Right. Because that could be a
it,
long turn
right,
with revenge triggers and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Like, I don't know.
right. And I mean, so that's kind of one of those interesting things where it was like, but instead of like, instead of, I think what it is like looking at, because so many people are like, I wouldn't say so many people. There's been some discourse throughout the community in regards to the tiebreakers, and let's be fair, you're not going to make everyone happy. Like a game designer, like especially I've talked to Plumber a couple times about like just game design, and you know what, no matter what a game designer does, and not I'm not saying, I'm not putting these words in his mouth by any means, but no matter what any game designer does, especially like looking at Magic, like people that design these cards, no matter what they did, there's always going to be someone who's pissed off about a card or a piece of a game or a rule in a game. There's always going to be some nerd out there that is pissed off because it's not the way that they thought it was going to be. That
Right.
caveat set aside, these are the rules as they're written. We might not like the rules as they're written, but that's the rules. So we could either get upset about it and not do anything, or maybe we just need to find a way as players to adapt to those rules. And I think that's kind of and to be fair, like all of you guys that are listening, we don't have the answer. I mean, I don't think they're in this short conversation. And if you want to discuss this in more detail, by all means, jump on our Discord. I'm sure this is going to just launch into a whole big conversation on Discord in regards
Yeah.
to this. And I'm
Wait. What have we done? Is it too late? We just stop recording, Todd.
delete episode now. No, check your seat. But no, I don't think I don't think we have an answer, the right answer, but I like at the end of the day, I think when we were like trying to finish the conversation, like when we got to like a point where it was like, we're not going to find a suitable answer to the conversation, it came to, well, we as players, the competitive player or that are playing in these events that are going to have mission critical, you're just going to have to find that way to adapt to the rules. And I don't think in this first year, like especially because I think the first time it really came to play and like it really came to the forefront was Adepticon, because there was a team event where it actually was a true draw. And if I remember, it was with
Yeah.
Sith Emperor Kevin and, oh gosh, I forget who his opponent was, but the two of them actually had a true tie at the team event in Adepticon. And that's when like it's the conversation really came to the forefront of tiebreakers and everything along those lines. So I think it's been less than a year. It's been what, 6 months maybe since Adepticon. So it's we probably need to start looking at how do we interact with the game in that last 30 minutes as a player to make sure that if you're not going to win that struggle, how are you going to win the tiebreakers?
Yeah, and and I got a little distracted because I suddenly had we were talking about Magic, and then I was like, oh, I there is another way, but time there's too much
Right.
time. Um, what I was originally trying to get to was just the fact that, like, yes, I know I am essentially saying, hey, there's one more thing you need to keep in your head as you get to the end of the game, But yeah, there's one more thing we got to keep it into our heads, because that the tiebreaker, and I'm not trying to say, oh, try and game it to make sure that you're the one whose last turn it is. Like, no, I'm just saying, bear in mind, you have a sword of Damocles hanging over your head, about to cut you. So make sure you know where you're gonna be when that sword drops.
Right, right. And I think it's one of those where, like I said, I think maybe that's one of those things where, we start looking at those tiebreaker units and how we utilize those in that last half hour and those last 2-3 activations that are going to happen in that time frame, of putting them on those points so that you are controlling those points. I mean, granted, there is some RNG that goes along with who you're drawing and everything along those lines, but how, and that's a big part of the game, is how we navigate that RNG that comes in front of us and that we have to deal with. So it'll be, like I said, it's just an interesting topic that came up um throughout the course of the weekend that I think we wanted to talk about, and don't really have a definitive answer for anybody though on. It was more along the lines of, here's something that came up we wanted to talk about, and by the way, now you're going to jump on Discord and tell us all of the things that we need to change, I'm sure. So by all means, please,
Eh,
listeners, do so.
Hey, this is one of those things where like, we just love this game. We love Star Wars. We're here having fun. And like, Todd, I know you and I aren't the most competitive of players, because we're kind of more about just the community building and getting terrain on tables and having letting everybody else play in the sandbox, which is
Hmm.
fine. But at the end of the day, a game has to end, and you are going to come into situations where you were not able to finish the game.
Hmm.
And like, I know it's frustrating to feel like a rule ended the game, when if you just had one more turn, like, you were winning. And I know that's also hard for spectating Shatterpoint, right? Because it's kind of like, you could look at the struggle tracker, and maybe somebody's got their every last cube on
Hmm.
their side, so it looks like they're winning. But no, you look at the board state and you look at the objectives, and you're like, no, you're not. You're gonna lose next turn. Like, look
Right.
at it, how everything is. So I get that it's hard in the moment to suddenly go, wait, what do you mean I lost? I I like, next turn I would have won. Well, a tournament setting, as many of the creators of the game keep saying, is an alternate format for how they view the game. The game is just supposed to be fun and show up with your friends and have a good time.
Yeah,
I am
looking at the core rules, there's not a time frame on the core rules, for this or for MCP. It's for you to play until the game ends, until someone wins 2 struggles. But if you're going to play in a tournament format, there needs to be a ending to the game at some point in time within that 2-hour time limit that they have set. How we get there, like I said, like we've been saying all along, how we get to that end point, we can argue back and forth which is the best tiebreaker. And like I said, probably if you were to have asked me on Thursday what I thought the best tiebreaker would have been, I would have said wounds. Then conversations that were had was like, well, if we make wounds, then what does that do for list building and how you impact how we make lists, how we play the game? Because now you're just going to go killing everything instead of trying to control objectives. Not necessarily, but like the focus is going to go a little away from objective control and more a little bit more towards the aggression and everything along those lines. And so it was interesting to like how tiebreakers can impact the core mechanics and the core idea of the game. And I didn't even think about that until we were having that conversation. So it was one of those where maybe, and then after that, that conversation, I'm just like, well, okay, maybe I am wrong. Maybe it is that this is the best tiebreaker, and maybe it's us as the player base that just needs to kind of modify our way of thinking. I mean, maybe, and like I said, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm sure that there's people that will come up and say, Todd, you're an idiot. and I'm used to hearing that. I am married, so by all means, you can definitely join my wife on that stand and tell me that I'm an idiot, and I will probably agree with you.
Uh,
But no, I mean that's one of those where I don't know. I don't know if there is a right answer or a wrong answer. I don't know if there's going to be a way that we're going to find that. Well, and we're not going to find one that makes everybody happy. We've already established that.
no, but I will say, like, I had at least one game recently. I'm trying to remember if it was in a tournament or a league game or what, but like somebody won and we had 0 wounds on both sides.
Hmm.
0. There were no wounds because we were both playing very heavy displacement lists, and all we did the whole game was chip damage, knock you off a point, chip damage, knock you off a point for the whole game, or use an ability, pull you off the point, push you off the point, over and over and over. And that was fun. I had fun.
Yeah.
But if you suddenly change the tiebreakers to wounds, will I want to play that list, or will I need to make sure that suddenly I can do enough damage to make sure that if I go to time, my wounds are going to matter suddenly?
And how many of the characters that are out there were designed based off of? I mean, every rule is taken into account as they're written. As those characters are developed and everything along those lines. How does that change? Like the core ideal of how these characters are going to get played if we change that rule, and that's not a small change. That's changing exactly how the game ends. um so it's like, does that impacts a lot. I think a lot more than I think like the knee-jerk reaction of that we were initially going with was like the initial thought was the initial knee-jerk reaction is, oh yeah, this is the best thing to do, and then it's like, well, wait, maybe it's not the best thing to do.
So, so Todd, all right. Again, I don't have experience with other tabletop games. I played Magic for so long. So, do we need more draws? Should should there just be draws? Like instead of the somebody getting to finish the final turn and then the objectives basically decide everything, even though you've been playing for 2 hours. I mean, in Magic, that would happen all the time. I mean, well, maybe
Yeah.
not to you, Mister Aggro player, but like there'd be times where I took too long in a game and we did our 5 turn, like, because in Magic it's the round ends and you're given whose ever turn it is turn 0, and then you're given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns between you. But if you didn't
If nobody
get
wins by the
to
end of that 5 turns, yeah.
yeah, if you didn't get to a result in those 5 turns, it's over. It's a draw. It's done. Like, because everybody made a big deal that we actually got a draw at Adepticon, and I'm used to that in Magic. So I was
Yeah.
like, I assume this is a big deal from the way everyone is reacting.
So a draw in Magic is not that big of a deal, especially when you look at like Pro Tour level, because you're playing 15 rounds. So someone going 10-4-1 isn't that big of a deal. Where your Swiss rounds are 4 rounds in Shatterpoint, and now you're going 2-1-1. So it a
Yeah.
draw. The draw has way too much impact, I think, in a tabletop environment, simply because your games
Fewer
are much
rounds.
fewer rounds, and you're only playing a 1 day. You're only playing 1 day of Swiss compared to, like I said, in Magic at the Pro Tour, you're playing 2 days of Swiss.
Yeah, no. See, this is so listeners, this is why we're talking about this. This is not because we have an answer and we're so star spangled awesome that we've cracked the code and the secret. It's that I'm hoping that this conversation will help, I don't know, maybe alleviate the feels bad of
Of
somebody's got to win.
Yeah, someone's
And
going to lose on
you win
tiebreakers sometimes.
and and sometimes they're going to win because the round ended and it was their turn. And
Yeah.
I know it sucks. I get it. I saw the looks on the players' faces when
Hmm.
that's what decided their 2 hour event. Because I'm still getting used to Todd. I have no idea who's gonna win. Like halfway through the game, I have no idea. And yes, I know there's funny jokes you could make about that, but 2 hours is a long time for you to suddenly be like, wait, I don't win. you win and it's because of this,
Right.
that's annoying.
Well, and I
I
think that's
get
why.
it.
Yeah, but I think that's the biggest thing is like that's where it comes to. Then we as players maybe need to reevaluate how we get to that end game, though. That coming back to the original point of if
Yeah.
it's going to upset us that we lose on tiebreakers, then we need to have the idea of how we're going to deal with not manipulating, but getting to the end game of winning on tiebreakers in the event that that comes up. And I think if you are that player that like you've lost on tiebreakers and you're upset, it's like, well, then take a step back and look at how am I going to utilize each piece of my list in order to make sure I'm winning on tiebreakers, make sure I'm having something to where you can't take that point away from me that you need to take your point away from when you're the last turn of the game in order to make sure that you get that 2-1 where I still have that point that you have to take away from me in order to win. And I think that's one of those things where it's like I think that's just a conversation in competitive play that we haven't had yet.
Yeah. Well, here you are, everyone. Here's the conversation. let's see what you think. I know that this is kind of like suck it up and get used to the rule, but I mean,
but it's also having a game plan for the rules. It's like, and I don't think the community as a whole has had a game plan for that rule yet. It's more along the lines of, well, that rule sucks. Okay, now how are we going to interact with that rule? I mean, with anything, here's a character. This is what this character does. How do we interact with that character? And we do that as gamers all the time. Now here's this rule, and here's how the end state of the game is going to happen. How do we interact with that as a player?
Yeah. So fine, Todd. You can say it in the nice way. Fine. All right. It's okay. But he is right.
Darn we're tootin'. My wife won't say that, but yeah, you're right. But
so somebody has to say it to you, Todd.
Exactly. Someone has to. So no, I do think that's something awesome. But so here's the thing. For all of you that are listening, if you want to continue having this conversation, you can support the channel by becoming a patron. And then you can come and talk to us all you want on our patron only Discord. But if you don't want to be a patron, you can still join our Discord. And the link to that's going to be in the description of the show notes. And you can come and talk to us all about this and say, Todd, this is why you're wrong. And Aubrey, this is why you're right. Or whatever you want to say, because we're pretty much not going to kick you out of the Discord unless you're a jerk. And we don't have those here anyway. So come on over, talk to us, join the Discord.
This weekend was great. People were running around.
Yeah, it was a good time. So yeah, I do want to thank each and every one of you guys for listening, though. It was awesome to have this conversation, and I really want to thank everybody who came out and came out to the GT. It was really cool to see everybody. So yeah, but thanks again everybody for coming out. Thanks for listening. As always, we do appreciate each and every one of you, and as always, may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.